information on a story we first brought you last night at 9. Minocqua Brewing Company owner Kirk Bangstad files a complaint with the Wisconsin Elections Commission to attempt to bar former President Trump from the Wisconsin ballot. Right after filing, the commission announced it tossed the complaint out. This is due to a connection with one of the commissioners. Robert Spindell was one of 10 Republicans who signed certificates in 2020 falsely stating Trump had won Wisconsin. Therefore, the commission tells WMTV 15 News it recuses itself.
This organization was created to specifically not be able to decide that because they have 3 Democrats and 3 partisan Republicans on the committee who will not be able to vote on this in concert.
Now the brewery owner plans to file a complaint in court. Over in Colorado, the Republican Party has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn a recent state ruling. This after the state Supreme Court ruled former President Trump was ineligible for office under the 14th Amendment's insurrectionist ban. The appeal means the state court's pause on the ruling, set to expire January 4th, will now be extended until the U.S. Supreme Court announces whether it will take up the appeal. Just yesterday, Michigan also rejected a lawsuit asking for Trump's removal from its ballot.